Throughout our lives, we've experienced the unexplainable, from bright apparitions to dark entities, changing our perspectives on the afterlife. Now we seek answers and intend to capture evidence of paranormal existence. These are our paranormal experiences. Welcome everyone to another TPS special, and today we're talking about tips and guidelines during investigations. So we've got three phases during an investigation. We've got the research phase, we've got the preliminary investigation phase, and then we've got the actual investigation. During the research phase, we look up about the location's history. So that might include, for an example, might be a convict-based location. So we'll just look up a bit about that history, and we'll also look up the paranormal history. Sometimes we might look at the paranormal history first and the experiences and see if they actually correlate with the actual history. So if it's a convict spirit that's been spotted, or someone might think they've spotted a figure with chains or with a particular type of dress that suggests that it is a figure or spirit that is a convict, then we might look up the place's history and see if those two correlate. With the paranormal history sort of side, we'll also possibly interview eyewitnesses, see if there's any history, paranormal history, where these events have happened before, so anything that's reoccurring or there's a pattern to them. Any sort of key or regular figures that appear, so anything that can help us during the investigation. Now the next phase is the preliminary phase, so we're taking all the information we've got from the research phase and going to the location itself. And that's where we sort of test the waters. And when I say test the waters, it's when we actually might start to use some experiments, very short experiments, and seeing if they work. Also investigating places where spirits have been spotted the most or where they've been active. So just sort of going to key areas and testing again the experiments or our gear, or seeing if there's like any contamination or anything like that. So normally we have like a checklist, and we'll talk about that later on, and we'll go around and see if there's any contamination, is there anything like strange EMF readings, any sort of fluctuations that don't make any sense. So that's on our checklist, and again we'll talk about that later. So when we've sort of tested the waters, we take all the information again and we go on to the investigation itself. And we'll be taking all the information we've learned over the research and the preliminary investigation stages and using everything in the investigation itself. Now that might be reusing some key experiments, or doing something different but building upon the experiments and the things we've done before in the preliminary. So normally during investigations we'll have a plan of attack, and that's where all that information will come in handy. So it will help us set up certain gear and help us obtain and achieve sort of objectives throughout the night, so we're not wandering around not knowing what to do. Alright, now this is when we're going to get a bit more in detail of what might happen on an investigation. So you heard me before talking about objectives and intentions. So our intention for the night might be to capture this figure doing something in this certain area, and that will help us out with our goals and objectives. And the reason why you want goals and objectives is because if you don't have anything, and if you just rock up on the night expecting to capture something but you don't know what, you end up mishandling the time you have, and you won't get anything done. Because normally on these investigations we don't have days and weeks to do these, we have a certain amount of time. We don't have a lot of time, and the best way to use that and utilize that location is to have a plan of attack and to have some objectives sort of in mind. So during your investigation, you'll probably also want to log information in your data. So this for instance, could be an EMF sheet. So sometimes investigation teams will, at the start, go around and do an EMF sweep. These EMF sweeps, and then they'll log them. Now these EMF sweeps might help you inform where a sweep spot is or where there might be contamination. And then at the time you logically go through those sort of steps thinking, okay, is it irregular, is it unexplained, or is it just a power point or something nearby that's causing these EMF fluctuations and irregularities. Another form of logging is also just your own personal experiences. Just so if you feel something in a certain spot, just jot it down on your team's log sheet. Now, the reason why we might be taking this, logging everything, either digitally or physically, is because if you go back to this location again, you might think you know what happened last time, but our mind sometimes has a way of just filling in those gaps and trying to make logical sense. It also might not be consistent, so we don't want to rely on our memory, because our memory can sometimes be a bit dodgy. We want something that's consistent and tells us over time what actually happened. It also helps when we need this data and stuff so we can actually progress. If we don't have anything to base our future investigations on, you'll be basically starting all over again, and it's just a waste of time doing anything, because you're just not progressing. You're just doing the first investigation over and over and over again. So you want to log all the data. So that's EMF, humidity, pressure, weather conditions. It's just everything. So make sure you log. It's very important to have some sort of record keeping. Now, our log sheets also might take into account gear and equipment. So it's not quite data logging. This is more just reminders with our check sheets, which is also helps us with our data logging. So for instance, it might be like, have you put batteries in the cameras? Is your equipment not malfunctioning? Is it working properly? So this little small things that you might think, oh yeah, I've got this. Sometimes you do need that extra reminder on your check or log sheets. Also, we may assess the person with our check and log sheets, just because we need it's just another step, another precaution to make sure what the person is experiencing is real, what other people are experiencing is actually happening. Sometimes people might be on certain medications or have a bit of a medical background that might cause them to experience strange things, like feelings, like just sudden and strange feelings. That is quite common in the paranormal, where people think they feel really sad all of a sudden, when in fact it could be just something a part of the medical history or the medications they're taking that make them feel that way. Also, anything that will cause any sort of hallucination. So we do sometimes assess people as much as we can. It's just another way to make sure that what they're experiencing is real, because it helps them out as well, and what we're hearing is legitimate and not, something that isn't actually happening or occurring, but in fact it has a logical explanation to it. So that's on the night. So make sure you have a plan of attack. Use that time effectively as much as you can. So you might want to get your team together and just talk about what you want to achieve, and use that information from the other research phases and preliminary phases to inform your methodology and your plan. Now, after all that sort of investigation sort of talk, it's also important to take criticism post-investigation. So if you've released all your data and your findings, either through just paper and stuff, and you hand it to them, or through a video sort of media format on social media, it's good to take criticism. While sometimes you might think we know what's best, it's good to have that extra set of pair of eyes that don't have any sort of bias or anything, to kind of come in, have a look at what you've done and say, well, you could have done this better, or no, there's actually something banging behind the door. It keeps us developing ourselves as paranormal investigators. Sometimes we always can't best check what we do. We try as much as we can to do that ourselves, but we're not. We're all for people coming in and telling us that no, it's just the door banging, something's happening. You could do this better. There's a better way to do this. I believe that there's no such thing as an expert paranormal investigator. there's people who have experience and know quite a bit, but there's no codified regulations or anything like that. So while we might listen to someone's criticism, it's always also a good idea to have a unique sense of sort of style, and also do stick up for what you believe in, but be respectful about it. And again, listen and try to take in what you think really works for you. So if someone says, for an example, during investigation, you should taunt the spirits, really taunt them, they'll get a reaction. For you, that might not be your style. It might not work for you personally, and I think that if you're doing those sort of things that make you uncomfortable, it won't work. Also, it's also dependent on the spirits themselves. If the spirits don't like that, if you don't like them taunting, they don't like being taunted, it's not going to work. Now, you might get a reaction, but do you want a bad reaction? Do you want a good reaction? What do you want? I suppose is the question. It's very a broad thing. As again, there's no such thing as a person who's got a qualification or has any sort of formal education in the paranormal. There's no one who has the authority to give that out. There's only sort of experiences and people working together to develop a sort of a sense of understanding about what the paranormal is. Now, what is a successful investigation? Now, when I was thinking about it, we actually went to an interview recently, and someone asked us, what is a successful investigation? Now, that's something I've never really thought of before. And a lot of people starting might think, what is a successful investigation? Is it something that we've got tons of evidence for, or is it something that we've achieved our objectives, as in we've set up all our gear, we've done everything right, but we didn't capture anything? Is that successful? I think it's all of the above, in a way, that you've tried your hardest to get something, and you might have got it, but you've done that right in that sense. You've set up all the cameras, you've done all the log work. That's great. I think that in itself is a success. You don't need to capture anything to be successful. Sometimes when you think you need to capture something to be successful, to make a successful investigation, you might try to sort of see something that isn't there in your footage and evidence. So you might start seeing shadows moving behind in a hallway or something that you've recorded. So it comes also back to the intentions. What do you want out of the paranormal? What do you want as an investigator? We all want that sort of evidence, but you can't let the evidence, your need for evidence, drive you. Otherwise you'll end up almost making something up that's not actually there. But if you've done all the right things, if you've done the log work, you set up all the cameras and your gear in the places according to your plan of attack on the night, that's a success within itself.
Now, for many of you that are wanting to get into paranormal investigating or anything like that, like how we started out, and you're thinking, well, it might be a bit expensive, for all the cameras or the lights or all the other bits and bobs that you may need for investigating. You don't always have to get the best stuff, like going to a store and then buying a camera brand new, or going to other stores and buying all the infrared lights and all the stuff brand new. Like we didn't start out that way. We actually started out from the stuff we already had, and we went on Gumtree. The cameras we used, we picked up rather cheap on Gumtree.
So we're talking probably about $150, and they're quite good cameras. They're slightly older cameras. The one we're using at the moment is one of those cameras, but they've got good quality for the price. But yeah, you don't need anything flashy or anything like that. I've known people just use their actual mobile phones for capturing EVPs, and they've actually got some quite good EVPs on their phones alone. So yeah, you can utilize a lot of cheap sort of equipment, and also you can even look up online like how to investigate on a budget kind of thing. There's tons of ways to investigate with actually having to go out and splurge just tons of money. Like you can get a cheap DVRs. Again, you can use your phone for both the visual capturing element, also the audio element. So you can even get dowsing rods as well. Another cheap alternative, probably like $20 to $35 or something like that. You can get them either in Gumtree or on eBay if you really want to. That's a good alternative. You can also do other things like using candles as an experiment. You can also use,
doorbells?
infrared sensor doorbells?
Yeah, the movement Movement sensor.
So motion sensors, they don't need to. You don't need to go invest in a REM pod to do that. And they've been we've used them before, and they've been quite effective at the ladies' cottage. Well, we had a friend who used them. It wasn't ours, but we really want one. They want one a couple because they're really good. Like we had them, had them facing across the hallway, and they weren't for a few times. We couldn't figure out why, and we don't know if that's paranormal. But the thing is, you don't need to go and splurge tons of money to do this sort of stuff.
No.
You can even use laser party lights to do that and get the spirits to try to interrupt the beams of light. It's another cheap alternative. You also can use talcum powder and like a garbage bag on the ground, making sure that the room's also not too drafty or anything, but you can use that, see if the spirits want to interact in that sort of way. You could also just use a bit of pen and paper, see if they can do anything. I don't know, there's another cheap alternative, just another experiment you could try to do. Some people do say that, or have experienced spirits actually physically moving things and touching things, so theoretically if you're thinking about that, they might be able to pick up a pen and scratch something, I don't know. If you're getting into some, or is it with the mirror scrying, if you really want to, I'm not too sure if that works. It can be a bit weird and freaky, but that's just another way. So even just using mirrors, just seeing if you can capture or see anything paranormal. Also use yourself as well.
Yeah. What was the other thing about? You gave me an idea about the pen and paper. That experiment we did. With
it was like blind writing. It's like blind writing, but it's not called that.
It's not scribing?
Just scribing, I'm pretty sure. Might be scribing. It's where you hold a pen, have a bit of paper, you close your eyes, and you just, what do you do?
You sort of go into like a could you say trance, a meditation state, and you sort of just
something sort of takes over, and you kind of start. You start doing the writing or the drawing, whatever it is, and that's another alternative. Again, does that actually work properly? You got to test it. You got to try these things to know if they actually work.
But yeah, if you look at our past videos, you would notice, or one of our first couple, you notice the camera we used, that was really low quality.
It was like 30, well, on 30 FPS normally it was going like 1080. But if you went in night vision, it was just like 10 to 15 frames per second, which is just horrible. It's like watching a slideshow, and it's very hard to capture anything on that.
But that's how we started out, and you know, if you start out there's nothing wrong with that at all, because you know we've been there, and it's just we've just accumulated gear over time, more cameras, more lights, more audio equipment, because you don't need the studio equipment like the Ghost Adventures team or any of the other ones on the internet. You can start out with purely dowsing rods, your phone for audio and visual, a candle for an experiment, and the pen and paper for scribing. Like
you can be pretty creative with your experiments. There's nothing that says you can't use a certain bit of household gear. As long as you're creative with it and you know what you're trying to get as an outcome through that experiment, that should be fine. Like I don't see why you couldn't use really anything. As long as you know the spirits have the ability to do it, even if you don't know that they do and you've got no information at all,
but
you could still try. I suppose.
Yeah, that's what you're there to find out. As you as a paranormal investigator, that's what you are there to find out with your gear, to see what they're capable of and get your answers, pretty much.
So I would like to thank everyone for watching this video. We probably could have put a lot more details in there, like on the massive sort of breakdown, but I don't want to ramble on this for hours. It's only supposed to be sort of guide and tips to an investigation that we personally do. There's a lot of other teams that have different styles and techniques. That's why it's important to develop your own sense of style and how you like to investigate. Again, there's no codified regulations or anything that say that's wrong and that's right, but we thought that giving you some sort of idea in what we do could help you in your own sort of way. So thanks for watching, guys, and make sure to subscribe and like if you really like this content, and also the other paranormal stuff. Go watch it if you like. Thanks, guys.